We're going to start today with a couple problems in our boat books, and there's also going to be a tape in. So you guys can go ahead and get ready. We're skipping handout 5, so you guys can kind of toss that one away. Handout 6 is the one that we're going to be working with today, but we're not there yet. So before we get there, I'd like you guys, underneath the notes you just took, to write in 20% of 60. Okay, this is about as easy as I can make a percent problem for you. 20% of 60, what is that value? Okay, before I start problems like this, I like to think about what type of answer would make sense, right? If I'm looking for 20% of 60, I'm looking for a part of 60, and it's less than 50%, so it's going to be a number smaller than half. So if I get a number like 45 or 50, I know I did something wrong, right? 20% is less than half, but it's also not nothing, right? So if I get 1 or 2, that also doesn't make sense here. Okay, so the way I like to think about this, I'm looking for 20% of 60. So I'm starting with 60, and I'm multiplying that by 20% to get some new value, okay? And we'll get that number in a minute, but before we do, this is weird, okay? Multiplying by a percent is something that doesn't really make sense, right? If I just do 60 times 20, I'm gonna get 1,200. And we already talked about the number we're expecting here is gonna be like around like 20, maybe 15, right? It's a number smaller than 60. So that doesn't quite work for us. And the reason why is percents on their own are hard to do math with, okay? It makes a lot more sense if we turn this into either a fraction, right? 20% is 20 over 100, okay? 100, or turning this into a decimal, okay? 20 is the same thing as 0.20. Okay, that is very different than 2%, right? 2% needs to be 0.02, right? Keep track of those zeros because they make a really, really big difference. Okay, once we have a fraction or a decimal, this math becomes pretty straightforward. To find 20%, we basically just take 60 and we multiply it by one of these values. It doesn't really matter which one. If I were you, I would use the decimal because I think it's faster. So if I grab out my calculator, I do 60 times 0.20, I'm gonna get 12. Okay. Think back to the beginning of this problem. Remember, I wanted you to check in your brain to see what type of answer you expected, right? Is 12 less than 60? Yeah, so we found a part of 60. And 20% is less than 50%, right? So we expect a number less than 30. This answer makes sense to me. So I ended up with something that I'm happy with here. Okay, so this is the only one that we're going to look at that doesn't have some sort of word problem connection. The next one I would like you to put in your boat books is a word problem. And I wrote a long version that we're going to talk about, and then I wrote a short version that I want you to add in your notes, okay? This one here, a sandwich at Lunchbox Lab costs $9.50. If you want to leave a 15% tip, how much will the meal cost? So what I need you to write in your notes, $9.50 sandwich, 15% tip. And we'll come back to that later. Okay, so this problem looks a lot the same as the last one, right? I'm starting with some sandwich that costs $9.50, okay, and I'm multiplying that by 15%. And that's going to give me some new value. Okay, in this problem, $9.50 times 15%. Again, I'm expecting a number that's less than $9.50, right? I'm looking for a part of it, and it's going to be quite a bit less than $9.50. I'm going to expect a number that's like $1, maybe $2, somewhere in that area. So if I don't get an answer like that, this problem, I probably made a mistake somewhere. Okay, again, it's hard to do math with percents, so it makes a lot more sense to either turn this into a fraction, 15 over 100%, right, out of 100, or turn this into a decimal, 0.15, okay? And when I grab my calculator again, okay, I'm gonna do 9.50, and I'm gonna multiply times 0.15. I'm gonna get 1.4. So I'm going to have to round this because I'm dealing with money. So instead of 42 cents and half a cent, we're going to make this 43 cents. Okay. Does this answer make sense for the problem that I asked? For a 15% tip, that does make sense on a sandwich that didn't cost $10, $1.45. That does make sense. But I would challenge you, this is actually asking how much will the meal cost, right? So do you think you can go into Lunchbox Lab and pay $1.43 and get a meal? No, right? We forgot a step, okay? This number here, $1.43, is not the cost of the meal. This is just the tax. So I can do this a couple different ways. I'll show you on the next problem, kind of the shortcut to get there. But basically, I have to take the tax, or I'm sorry, this isn't tax, this is a tip. Okay. Tip, and I have to add it back into the price of the original sandwich, right? So the price of the sandwich was $9.50, and I'm adding in this tip here. So if I add that to $9.50, that's going to give me $10.93. Does that answer make more sense? It does make more sense to me. Okay, you're going to need this sort of skill tomorrow when we jump into a Desmos activity that's based on an old game. I think you guys are going to dig it. We're also going to be doing that in groups. But before we get to that, I'll explain that a little bit more later. I want to do one more problem, and I want to do this as a shortcut. So this one, again, long word problem, short version for you to write down. This one says Chris's cool iPod originally cost $180 in 2007. It was on sale for 30% off when he bought it. What was the new price? So we're ignoring tax. We're ignoring, you would probably want tip on something like this. But what I want you to write is $180 iPod, 30% off. Okay, so the way we talked about this before, you could do, right? It's $180, and we're multiplying that by 30%, and then you can just take that away from the original price to find your new price. But there's another way to look at this, and this is one of the reasons percents can be really helpful, right? If I pay 100%, right, the entire thing. I'm paying for the whole price of the iPod, right? But I don't have to pay 100%. I'm saving 30%. So I can actually do this a little bit more efficiently. I can do this a little faster by thinking with percents, right? I don't want to pay 100% because this thing's on sale. It's 30% off. So what percent do I still have to pay, right? I can think about this differently. Instead of paying 100%, I can do 70%. Okay, if you don't understand where that number came from, I want you to go back like a minute in this video and make sure you get where it comes from. But basically, if I do a little bit of critical thinking here, I can get like a shorter strategy to get my answer here. I don't have to pay 100% of this iPod. I get 30% off. So the only percent I have to pay is 70%, right? It's the rest of it. And then this problem ends up being a lot like the first one, right? But it's just a little quicker. 70% I can do as my fraction or as my decimal. And then when I do my math, 180 times 0.70, I get 126. Okay. I can double check, right? This is less than the $180 that I started with, right? But it's not like crazy, crazy cheap. It's still like a reasonable amount of money to pay for this thing, but it is, you do have a discount on this. So this strategy right here of thinking about what percent you care about can be a really helpful way to do these problems faster, okay? And just a quick recap, I want to go back to this last problem. Instead of multiplying this one started with 950. If we wanted to do this the fast way, right? What multiply by here to get that answer instead of doing 15% and adding it on, right? We start with 100%, that's paying for the whole sandwich, and then the extra we have to pay for the tip is 15%. This problem works the same way if we do 115%, right? It'll save you a little bit of time and make these problems go a little bit faster. This one here as a decimal, it's bigger than 100, it's 1.15, and that'll give you the same answer that we got a minute ago, that like $10.93 or whatever that was. It'll give you the same answer that you already have in your boat book. Okay, a couple more videos today. I'm sorry, a lot of me talking. You guys can deal with it. I'll see you in the next video in just a second.